Hello friends, Jellord here. Doing a little controller repair today, and also just going to be doing a little bit of talking about some of the things I think are strange right now about the video game industry, and just generally the approach that a lot of developers are taking. Excuse me, with the rhetoric surrounding their games and just the way that they talk about their games in general. Now, this repair, I'm just gonna, what I'm basically doing is, if you can see, these analog sticks are pretty gross. The plastic's pretty much squishy and just peeling off at this point. So I'm gonna replace the caps on those analog sticks. And as you can see, sorry, the focus is a little bad here. This guy's pretty dirty. So I'm gonna clean them up as best I can too. First things first, I'm just gonna open up the shell, get it apart, get the internals out, and then I'll get to cleaning the shell, just to give you guys kind of a little forecast of where it's going. And then, in the meantime, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the topic today, which, like I said, the game industry and just generally how developers present their work and what have you. One other thing I'll say, I'll be replacing this little ribbon cable here, which is what attaches to the back plastic. I guess I don't know what you'd technically call it, but yeah, the rear plastic cover here actually houses the light indicator and everything. When I was doing repairs on another controller for a friend, I damaged this ribbon cable, so I ended up swapping the one out that was in here into his controller so that I could get it 100%. I didn't have these on hand, so I ordered a few of them now, so I'll be able to replace the light in this guy. Yeah, that's about it. These are the two parts I'm placing. I'm putting some new caps on, and I'm putting a new ribbon in here. So that's pretty much where we're at with that. Having myself a nice little vanilla coffee over here on the side as well. Love it. Alrighty. Start with the screws on the back. So, what I wanted to discuss. See, I have a background in studying literature. I went to college for a general English degree. And I was pretty disenchanted by the whole experience. I earned my associate's degree, but I had to take 2 more classes. I was 6 credits away from getting my bachelor's. And, I had about a B average. I didn't care that much about getting the best grades. It was about halfway through college I was on the dean's list at the 3rd year. But after that, I really started to get disenchanted with the English program there, if you could call it that. And one of the things, keep in mind, these little bits of plastic falling out probably from the tab that holds this guy together. Or the 2 tabs that hold them together. Here and here, these always end up snapping when you're taking apart the PS4 controller, but don't panic because the 4 screws that hold it together are more than enough. Anyway, here we go. We got the back off. Like I was just trying to give a little background here to, I don't know if you want to say qualify myself, but just, I know how a lot of these people that are kind of plaguing the game industry lately, these article writing activists, if you will, that they're often called by others. Oh shoot, what am I doing here? I gotta, getting ahead of myself. Gotta remove this little ribbon cable. I don't want to damage anything. Come on now. Okay, we'll remove the shield first. In any case, went to college for English. And I nearly finished my degree before I was completely disenchanted by the program. And instead, the last bit of money I had to finish school with, I decided to just move away from my hometown. But that's neither here nor there. My point being is I participated in what I would consider essentially the early stages of the indoctrination of a lot of college students into, let's say, the mind state that we're seeing this day and age. The way that they trained me in English was they were always having us write critical essays. Critical essays critiquing different works of literature. And one of the primary ways we would critique these pieces was through literary lenses. That's what they would, that's what they called it. And people this day and age, they've heard the term lens, viewing something through a lens. But, one of, as early as, this is a literary term. It's a literary term that's kind of become more popularized through politics, and also, just through people's analysis of media and entertainment, whether they realize it or not. They're often taking up one of these lenses, because this is how they trained writers back in the 2000s, and I'm not sure how they do it now in college, but I'm sure it's even worse. But they would tell you to read a book, and they'd want you to adopt a certain lens while you were reading it. And these lenses could be any number of things. It could be something like, I forget some of the actual technical terms. I do remember many of them, though. Like, for instance, you could read something from a Freudian perspective, and that would be considered a psychoanalytic perspective that you were taking on the piece. So that means that basically everything that you're reading in the piece, you're going to be filtering it through a Freudian lens or a psychoanalytic lens. And not necessarily Freud, but he was kind of the granddaddy of it all. So they often will call it, they'll also often attribute the psychoanalytic lens to Freud. But there were many other psychologists who contributed to the psychoanalytic lens. In any case, just want to clean under this light a little bit. That being said, that was the primary thing that they would teach you in English, analysis through lenses. And you'd write these critical essays. Now, here's the interesting thing. I was very much against this teaching method, just the whole entire process of them teaching us to be critical essayists. That's what they were teaching us to do. And I was vocally against the way the department was being run. I went to the dean of students a couple of times. And what's funny about it all is ultimately they were trying to get me to join the faculty. They wanted me to go to graduate school, join the faculty, and become one of them, essentially. I don't know why. I think it's probably because maybe some of them thought that their program was full of shit too, and they wanted somebody to be there to be vocal about it. Maybe they were all too cowardly, had too much to lose. They thought if they had some fresh blood, somebody else that didn't have anything to lose, maybe I could be openly critical of it all, and who knows, not get chastised as badly as they would. Who knows what the intent was? But I guess I'm downplaying it a bit, but they clearly they thought I was doing good work. So we'll leave it at that. Anyway, back to the lenses. It's all right, a little quiet here because, oh, look at this. It does not look like this ribbon cable is going to fit in here. That's kind of disappointing. Like, how many different ribbon cables could there possibly be for this controller? Yeah, that is not correct at all. And that is not correct at all either. Neat. What a waste of money. All right, well, that's a bust. Anyway, we'll just replace the analog sticks then. These are pretty easy. They just pretty much pop right off. And then they're kind of keyed. So you just kind of have to turn them until they pop into place. Or fall into place, however you want to say it. All right, pretty disappointed that the little ribbon cable didn't work, but it's not the end of the world. They were like a few bucks. The shipping was more than the cables. Anyway, going on. In the English department, they only taught us, they didn't teach us any marketable skills. They only taught us how to be critical essayists. And I'd often point out to my teachers that this wasn't an occupation. Like, you couldn't occupationally write critical essays about literature. That is, of course, unless we all became professors. Who knows? Maybe that's why they invited me. To become one of them. Because they didn't want to disappoint me. They wanted to give me an occupation that actually utilized what they were teaching me. But anyway, being a critical essayist is not an occupation. And if it is, not a lot of people were going to get that job anywhere. Well, it turns out I wasn't totally right about that. Turns out being a critical essayist is something that you can do as a writer in the video game industry or in the film industry. So a lot of these people who were going to college and basically going to learn English, they went to essentially these indoctrination programs that were teaching them all of these lenses that they could use to analyze the world and entertainment. And that's what they got taught how to do. And it's like, well, how are you going to find a job writing critical essays? Well, here you go. Get a job with a game site. Show them your writing credentials. And since all you did in college was write about psychoanalytic theory, gay and lesbian analysis, Marxist analysis, all these lenses that they taught you about. That's pretty much the reading you're going to do of everything. Or whichever one's your favorite one. I mean, for a lot of them, it ended up being Marxism, obviously. That was their favorite lens. So that's the one that we see a lot of these journalists. Game journalists running over to that and the gay reading of everything, essentially. But I mean, that's just to give a little background on and shed some light, I think, on why a lot of these people are in the industry. you know? Um, and how a lot of these people ended up in the, because we try to come up with explanations of why. It's like, well, if you hate it, if you don't like gaming, you're not a gamer. Why are you writing about games? Why are you in the gaming industry? Well, this is why. And I've heard some content creators talking shit, joking about, oh, they couldn't make it in regular journalism, so they went to gaming. And I mean, maybe that's true in some cases. A lot of the bigger, a lot of the actual news sites and correspondence and channels and all of that, it's probably pretty hard to break into that stuff because it's a big special club. But in the gaming industry, there's a lot of publications that are not like super professional. You don't have to be like, there's not an aura of super professionalism like there is in regular journalism. So, because it's about games, it's about having fun, right? So, this is the industry they end up in because they don't have another way of using their degree, basically. So, they write critical essays about video games. And of course, they hate it. They hate it because video games never really adhered to these social ideas of sexuality, social ideas of basically a lot of the college bullshit, idealism. So what ends up happening is we get a bunch of these people in the video game industry because they are critical essayists and there's no real jobs for them besides either becoming a tenured professor so you can keep writing in the scholarly journals to keep your tenure and stay published, because that's part of your job is to keep publishing in these journals. And so, yeah, this is how you get a bunch of people that are trying to utilize their degree, trying to do what they were trained to do. And it's just silly. We got all these people in the industry that don't belong there, who are desperately trying to squeeze some money out of their education, that they basically wasted their time. Because I mean, I didn't want to become one of those people. I didn't want to spend my life writing critical essays for a magazine that basically just would not allow you to even share your own opinions. It's just like college. It's like when in college, there was a few classes that I had failed, and it boiled down to the teacher didn't like my opinion. And once I finally swallowed my pride and just started telling them what I knew they wanted to hear, guess what? I started getting good grades from the teachers that failed me. And it's exactly the same when it comes to bosses. They tell you what to write about at these magazines and these websites. They tell you what to write about, and that's what you do. And if you want to get your paycheck, that's what you do. And you drink the Kool-Aid and you become one of them. And if you don't do it, then you're not working with them, basically. That's what it boils down to. And a lot of these people who wanted to write stories, wanted to be writers, wanted to be journalists, they all ended up in the game industry. And there they are, pushing the only thing they know, which is whatever they are parroting from their college, spreading their ideals, the ideals that were spread to them through the university. And I mean, a lot of this stuff is taught in a way that they make it sound like it's like science fact, And a lot of these people who went to college, they think that they're qualified to talk about a lot of these social issues through these games just because they went to college and got a degree, which, a degree doesn't qualify you to try to dictate to people how they should run their lives or what is right and what is wrong. Anyway, I'm getting off topic here. What I really want to, the thing I want to get to is, the other day I was watching a content creator's channel called Noisy Pixel, and they were like in PAX East or whatever the hell it's called. And they're talking to these game devs. And these game devs are, as you might imagine, talking about the games that they're developing. And one of the things that struck me, like right away, and early on in the video, just a couple minutes into it, was each one of these devs that I saw in the first couple minutes, because I didn't end up finishing the video because it was lame. It seemed like it was useless because the first thing the guy starts talking about is what his game means, what the game he's working on. And I don't even know if he was one of the developers. I don't know if he was just one of the hype guys. Whoever this dude was, he was just going on about the meaning behind their game, what it's supposed to mean. And like right away, I took issue with this. Because just like these dummies, I too went to college for English, and I'm familiar with all the lenses, and the other thing that comes with it is all the different fallacies that also accompany literature and the study of literature. And one of the fallacies that I pointed out, I was like, it would be nice if these devs talked about their games instead of the messages that their games are trying to portray, because all of the rest is just intentional fallacy. And right away I get a response from, surprisingly, I got a response from one of the content creators on the channel. I don't know, because it's multiple people that work on this channel, I believe. I don't know that much about it. I mean, I've been watching them for a while, but it seems like there's different people. And I don't really care either way. But, like, this guy tells me, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he says, but that's all right. Just stick with us and we'll put you on the right path, he says. Like he's supposed to be Jesus or something. Like he's going to teach me the right way to be. And the right opinions to have and what have you. So I responded. And I told him what intentional fallacy actually meant. I told him how the concept behind the intentional fallacy is that the author, whatever they say their intended meaning is, has no actual bearing on the impact of the work itself. And that just makes sense, because how is the work going to have any kind of impact if nobody reads it, right? And what needs to happen in order for the impact to happen, to be there, somebody needs to read it. And here's the idea. It's whatever the author intended has nothing to do with the impact that the work has. Because you can sit there and tell people like, oh, my story is about the most important things to humanity. It's the best. It's going to teach people how to love again. Whatever the hell you want to say about your story, it doesn't matter, because what you think it's about isn't important as soon as it leaves your grasp. As soon as it starts being read by the greater public, it's going to mean all sorts of things to all sorts of different people. And Here's an example of me, for me personally. Let's take Final Fantasy VII, for instance, because I was talking to a buddy at work, and he's like, "Oh, you've never been impacted by like the message in a story?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have." For instance, Final Fantasy VII, not the remake. I'm just talking about the original right now. What impacted me the most in that story, I remember as a kid, it was the part where Cloud is like working through his multiple personalities. He's working through the fact that he thinks he's Zack, and he's remembering and realizing that he's actually Cloud, and that's another person. It's not him. This was pretty impactful for me when I was younger because, like, my mother was schizophrenic, so she suffered from multiple personality disorder, depression, um, a whole litany gambit of different psychological issues. And going through the scene where Tifa is helping Cloud work through it all so he can become a hero again. I was really touched by this. It gave me the impression, when I was younger, it made me feel like maybe eventually my mother could be okay and overcome her psychological issues, Gave me a bit of hope. And that became the meaning for me. Now, how many people even talk about that part of that game in relation to mental health, right? So that was right there. That was the way that I interpreted it. Now, did the creators, the authors of the story, what did they intend? Who knows? And at that point, it doesn't matter because that's the meaning I got from their work. And my point is to illustrate the point I'm trying to make is these works will always mean different things to different people because of their different lived experience, right? So when the author is trying to tell you what it means, it doesn't actually matter what they say because it doesn't mean anything until you read it for yourself. And then you're the one creating the meaning. And that meaning is going to be different from the meaning that everybody else takes from it. So, going to the meat of the topic, I pointed out to him that what intentional fallacy was, and he was basically trying to tell me that it had nothing to do with the video, and then he was trying to hit me with the gotcha, you didn't watch the whole video, and whatever, doesn't matter. What I really want to talk about in relation to this is messages in stories in general are being misused this day and age. And the way they're being misused is the message becomes more important than the game, which that is not how it should be. If you're leading with the message, you've already fucked it up. You should be showing people how the game plays. The first thing you should be showing people is, who do you play as? Do you run? Do you jump? Do you swing a sword? Do you shoot a gun? What do you do in the game? And how do you do it? And why do you and what do you do and how do you do it? What is the game play? Because the operative term here is game. And it's like, imagine if they'd pitched Final Fantasy VII as a story about a psychologically distraught schizophrenic man who thinks that he is in fact his own dead friend. Imagine if they pitched the whole thing like that instead of showing you the awesome train at the beginning and showing you Cloud with his giant sword, Barret with his gun arm, and telling you you're going to save the world. No. What if they framed it as like, this dude has psychological problems, and this is a story about him solving his psychological problems because mental health is a big issue in our society, and this game is going to help us solve that problem. Imagine if they would have pitched it like that. People would have thought that that was weird. And not to mention, it probably wouldn't have sold as well. All right, she's looking a lot cleaner. Looking a lot better. Unfortunately, it still wasn't able to repair the light, but whatever, it's fine. Now it's tidy. New analog sticks are looking good. I'll order some new ribbons for it, but whatever. To finish my point, I'm not articulating it the best. I know I'm kind of all over the place here, but when you're trying to put a message into a story, the message should be in the subtext of the story. That's my point. The story of Final Fantasy VII is about an unlikely group of friends who become eco-terrorists. See, even pitching it like that sounds lame. Like, they could have pitched it like that as like a whole save the world, eco-terrorists, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't. The actual story is just about friends saving the world from a universal threat, and basically the power of friendship. Like so many anime, games, etc. But there were many messages in Final Fantasy VII, and they were all relegated to the subtext. The forefront of it, the front and center of it all, was the gameplay, the materia system, which is a big part of the gameplay, and just the updated gameplay from the normal Final Fantasy turn-based formula. You know, it was one of the final evolutions for the menu-based combat. That was the focus of it. That was the gameplay. And that was the coolest thing about it. The world and the gameplay were the two big selling points that made it look amazing. Not the subtext, not the story about psychological turmoil, not the story about eco-terrorists. The real star of the show was the world and the gameplay. And you know, this is all opinion, but the problem with a lot of modern games, and when I was watching this Noisy Pixel video, is one of the first guys in the video just right away started talking about what his game means, what it means. This is what it means about society, you know, a critique of society, a critique of this, a critique of that. And it's like, dude, your message, you talking about your message doesn't matter. You telling me what it means doesn't matter. It's not your place to tell me what it means. It's like, yes, maybe you have some intent of what you want it to mean. But by the time it gets in my hands and when I start playing it, I might not even focus on anything that you consider to be the core meaning of the game, the story in the game. I might focus on something like, let's say, cloud psychology, like I did in Final Fantasy VII. And I wasn't so focused on the eco-terrorism and all that crap because I don't relate to that. I didn't relate to that at the time. It's not like I was going around trying to save animals from oil spills or some shit like that on my free time. That wasn't what I was doing as a kid, so that's not what I was relating to. But I had a schizophrenic mother, and I was able to relate to that side of the game, right? That's the part of the message that stuck out to me. And when you consider authorial intention and you think about the intentional fallacy, where the author's intent has no bearing on the impact of the actual piece of work, because the impact comes from the audience. And much of that impact for the audience, when it comes to video games, much of that impact is going to come out of the gameplay and the visuals of the game. because the operative term here is game. It's a game. That's going to be the main part of it that's going to inform your impressions. So when you come out and you're not even showing gameplay, you're showing cutscenes, and you're talking about the story, and you're talking about the characters in relation to the story and the meaning of the story and the message in the story, none of that fucking matters, because it's just, that's all going to disappear by the time the customer gets it in their hands. What you want it to mean doesn't matter, because it's going to mean what the customer interprets it as. And it's very real for, I mean, you've heard, especially when it comes to movies, like what the director's intention was for a particular scene or this or that, and then it doesn't end up being that way for the audience. It doesn't end up being perceived that way. And it's precisely that rift between the way that the audience perceives the work and the way that the author perceives their own work. That rift right there is the essence of the intentional fallacy. And when authors of these stories for these games come out and they start to tell you what it means, they're already fucking up, because it doesn't matter. Like, their interpretation of the meaning behind their story is useless to the viewer, to the player. Since it has no bearing on how the game is going to be received, how they want it to be perceived, their idea of how they want it to be perceived has no real impact. I get to sound redundant, on the impact that the game has. Them telling you about what it means and about the message is useless. They're wasting their time, and if anything, they're hurting their game. They're hurting their game by coming out and trying to tell you the message behind it right away. The message behind the game should be something that you derive after playing the game, completing it, and determining it through the subtext of the story. And what it is, it's just another classic case of them putting the cart before the horse. It's like what should be pulling the entire thing should be the visuals and the gameplay of that video game. And then the cart should be whatever subtext, intermittent message that they might have. And here's the thing, there's certain tropes throughout entertainment that people see and they say, oh, these are tired tropes. For like one example, easy one, that's in all of anime and a lot of JRPGs, the power of friendship. You know why that trope works? Because it's inoffensive. And it's a universal experience, unless you're somebody that just doesn't have any friends, I guess, which is possible. But for the most part, it's a universal experience of people having friends. So they can relate to something like the power of friendship. That becomes a pretty innocuous message for the end of the story. And there's also just like some of the messages in the hero's story. Let's say, for instance, the classic hero's story. The idea that, you know, if you try hard enough, you can accomplish anything. Another very old trope, but it's inoffensive. It's non-abrasive. It's universally lived and understandable. It's something everybody experiences in one way or another during the human experience. So both of those messages that can become the subtext in a story work because they don't offend people, or they don't polarize the game. So it's like those messages are relatively safe. And if your game is simply about the message, great. This day and age, it's not going to do well. But if that's what you want, if your game is just a message game, then sure, you can put the message first, and the subtext can be the gameplay, I guess. But here's the thing: if you're putting out a new game, you should be showing everybody the gameplay first and foremost, and the visuals first and foremost. That's how you hook them, not by telling them what your game means. Telling people what your game means is a fucking waste of time And I hope I've been able to illustrate that with the intentional fallacy. There is no connection between you telling people what it means and the actual impact that it has on the audience. And I hope that that example with Final Fantasy VII could help you to illuminate the idea, because for me, the game carried a much different meaning than for a lot of other people. There could have been many other things people latched onto. So I think one of the biggest problems right now in the industry is everybody's obsession with the messaging and making that the most important thing about their game when it shouldn't be. It should be about the gameplay and the visuals first. And then once people actually get their hands on it and stuff, those messages should be the things that people are talking about in their YouTube channels when they finish the game. They say, oh yeah, like this resonated with me because this character went through this or that or the other thing. It shouldn't be, hey guys, look, this is our game where the characters go through this or that or the other thing. We're not even going to show you the gameplay footage because this or that or the other thing is much more important. Much more important. We are here to tell you some kind of message. We're here to teach you how to live. And the last thing anybody wants to, regardless of the last thing anybody wants to listen to, regardless of their intelligence level, or I would wager their age, they don't want to be lectured on morality. They don't want to be lectured on how they should be living when they're playing a game. Let's go back to the operative term here, a game. So when this guy in Noisy Pixel was trying to tell me that that intentional fallacy was irrelevant to gaming, I'd say it's more relevant now than ever, because these authors are obsessed with meaning. But the reality is it's a game. Look at Mario. Look at Mario. A plumber in a fantastical world where mushrooms power him up, then he's off to save some princess that he met over there. And how did he get over there? Through plumbing. Okay? Does any of that shit make sense? No. Was anybody ever trying to explain the meaning behind Mario? No. It was a bunch of crazy bullshit. And that was part of the charm, was exactly the fact that it was a bunch of crazy bullshit. Because it's a video game. And I think video games are taking themselves entirely too seriously this day and age. And because of that incredible amount of seriousness, and them always trying to make every game some fucking critique of society or some shit that nobody wants to hear, because all we hear all day long is critiques of society from everyone on the news, everyone on YouTube, all over the place. You don't have to look far to find some critiques. And it's like the age-old adage goes, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one, and they're all full of shit. That's just it. It's fun to share opinions. It's fun to compare turds. But at the end of the day, all of them are turds. They're all turds, man. None of it fucking matters. But there it is. I'll probably pick back up a little bit on this rant when I end up doing another F-Zero video, which I'll probably do one later tonight after I make some late dinner for myself. But I'll do an F-Zero video and talk a little bit more. I'll talk about the recent F-Zero news, what I think about it a little bit, and I'll also talk about maybe if I can get my thoughts organized a little more, I can articulate some of the ideas that I had here in this video slightly more coherently. But anyway, shout out to anybody from my friends at work and stuff like that, if they end up listening in on this. I hope it was kind of interesting. And I hope you enjoyed maybe just watching me mess around and get this controller cleaned up and put some new sticks on it. I'll probably make another little short video once I get the right flex cable for this light. But I think that's all I got for now. Video's a little longer than I wanted it to be. But in any case, I'll see you in the next F-Zero video. That is Jelord out. Bye, Dios, friendos.